Imagine being buried alive, but still breathing, surrounded by mud, rats, and the constant sound of death. This is not a nightmare. This is the Western Front. This is World War I. The year is 1914. Europe is on fire, and millions of young men, farmers, teachers, brothers and sons are about to descend into the most brutal system of warfare the world had ever seen: the trenches. When the war began, everyone believed it would be over by Christmas. Generals on both sides imagined cavalry charges and quick victories. They were catastrophically wrong. By late 1914, neither Germany nor the Allied forces could break through each other's lines, so they did the only thing left to do. They dug. Hundreds of miles of trenches carved into the earth, stretching from the English Channel all the way to the Swiss border. These weren't just holes in the ground, they were cities underground, networks of tunnels, dugouts, communication lines, and command posts, and they became home to millions of soldiers for the next 4 years. Life in the trenches was a slow, grinding horror. The mud was everywhere. After heavy rain, trenches would flood knee-deep. Men stood in freezing water for days. Their feet would rot, a condition the doctors called trench foot. Thousands lost their toes. Many lost entire legs. Then came the rats, massive, fearless rats fed on the bodies of the dead. Soldiers reported rats the size of cats crawling over their faces while they slept. And the smell. The trenches reeked of death, chemicals, unwashed bodies, and rotting food. Men lived with that smell every hour of every day. At night, soldiers were ordered to stand on the fire step, peering over the top of the trench into no man's land. That dark, empty space between the two sides, barbed wire, shell craters, and the bodies of men who never made it back. Sleep was nearly impossible. Artillery shells fell without warning. A man could be eating his ration one moment and gone the next. And then came the order that every soldier feared most: over the top. When commanders ordered an advance, men would climb out of the relative safety of their trenches and walk, sometimes literally walk, across no man's land toward enemy machine guns. The Battle of the Somme, July 1st, 1916, the single deadliest day in British military history. Nearly 60,000 British soldiers were killed or wounded in a single day. In a single day. Men fell within seconds of leaving the trench. Some never even made it 5 steps. The machine guns cut them down in waves. And yet, the officers kept blowing their whistles, and the men kept going. It wasn't stupidity. It wasn't madness. It was discipline, loyalty, and a devastating failure of military strategy that would haunt history forever. If bullets and artillery weren't enough, the trenches introduced the world to a new kind of terror: chemical warfare. In April 1915, German forces released chlorine gas along the front lines near Ypres, Belgium. A yellow-green cloud drifted silently toward the Allied trenches. Soldiers had no idea what it was until it burned their lungs from the inside. Later came mustard gas, even more sinister. It had almost no smell. Men wouldn't even know they were exposed until hours later, when their skin began to blister, their eyes swelled shut, and their lungs began to bleed. Gas masks became standard equipment, But even with masks, the fear never left. Every strange smell, every shift in the wind, every yellow tint in the air, it could be the last thing you ever noticed. World War I ended on November 11, 1918. The guns finally fell silent. But the numbers are almost impossible to comprehend. Over 17 million people dead, more than 20 million wounded, entire generations of young men erased. The trenches of the Western Front stretched over 700 kilometers, and for 4 years they moved barely a few miles in either direction. All of that suffering, all of that death, for a few miles of mud. Today, if you visit the fields of France and Belgium, you can still see the faint outlines of those trenches in the earth. The land remembers, even when we try to forget. World War I did not end war, but it changed war and humanity forever. These men were not just soldiers, they were human beings who endured the unendurable, and their story deserves to be remembered.